BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Okay, here we go. So we are on a street and it's all open air and there are loads of chocolate stalls. Chocolate sandwich. Hot grilled chocolate sandwich. Choose your filling. Flavoured sauce, dark chocolate milk. Okay. Welcome to the food programme with me, Leyla Kazim, where this week I begin in York in the north of England at the city's annual chocolate festival.
So we have dark milk, white, I have a special coffee chocolate and a ruby chocolate.
And a what chocolate?
Ruby.
Ruby?
Have you tried ruby? Actually pink. Naturally has a kind of red fruit flavour to it. So just put it in your mouth, let it dwell, don't chew it. And as it warms up to your body temperature, it will then start to give you the flavours.
Oh yeah, there it is.
You got it. It just gets to you, doesn't it? Right?
It's no coincidence that this festival is taking place in York, which was and still is home to some of the biggest chocolate makers in the world, as well as a thriving community of independents with their stalls on display today. What's your name?
I'm Tracy.
Hi Tracy.
We've been going for nearly 20 years. Chocolate Fountain, Belgian chocolates. We're based in Mansfield in Nottingham, but we come to the chocolate festival every year. We're probably coming about 10 years now, and we sell beautiful strawberries, fresh fruits, marshmallows and delicious Belgian chocolates.
Absolutely amazing. And hot chocolate.
And hot chocolate
This is
drinks.
what I'm here to order, please. I would like a dark chocolate, just plain without...
Marshmallows
No.
and cream.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Oh yeah, you all right?
Good, thank you.
Do you want to try some?
It's Chris Chappell and we're the Undairy Co.
The cream is plant-based chocolate.
Because we're 50% cacao even in our milk chocolate, there's a heck of a lot of cocoa butter in there anyway, so it melts really well. Do you want to try the
So I should definitely try the milk chocolate then, shouldn't I?
Yes, you should. I like to give people samples of everything. It's a common misconception that what people don't realise is like less than 1% of people actually make their own chocolate. Most people just buy it and melt someone else's because there's like 4 companies in the world that make most of the world's chocolate.
In this programme, I'll be exploring York's unique chocolate history, plus what's behind the current craze for Dubai chocolate. More on that later. It all starts with the story of Quaker faith and confectionery. Because the original chocolatiers in this city, Rowntree, the inventors of Kit Kat, Terry's and their chocolate orange, they were also social reform pioneers, the inspirations for Britain's welfare state. So how did we go from that to the chocolate industry we have today? A commodity traded on the futures market that is driving deforestation, farmer poverty, and unhealthy food habits. And where do we go from here? But first, how did a small northern city come to play such a central role in one of the world's most delicious foods?
Coming to York many years ago, the whole city smelt of chocolate, and it just felt such a shame that nobody was doing anything about chocolate, given the fact that so much of the industry started here in York. And that was really because so many of those factories that had been bought out by really big international companies, they kind of closed down, and a lot of people were seeing that as being part of York's past and heritage. And I thought it was such a shame that they were all being put behind us rather than us being able to embrace what chocolate could be.
This is Sophie Jewett, founder of York Chocolate Festival and owner of York Cocoa Works, a bean-to-bar chocolate maker, cafe and public education centre.
We wanted to just bring together all of these different people that had something to celebrate and share about chocolate here in the city.
What's so special about the link between chocolate and the city of York?
So York has these 2 connections. So we've got Terry's, and Terry's kind of creators of the chocolate orange, one of my favourite chocolate products from my childhood. And Terry's, they were confectioners. So Mr. Terry himself was an apothecary, and he would practice the art of making medicine taste nicer using sugar. So he would kind of mould these really high-end confections in the day. So they was kind of formed back in the 1700s. And then we've got Rowntrees and their roots in kind of the role of Quakers and the temperance movement and how they developed drinking chocolate. And in actual fact, Mr. Rowntree learnt his drinking chocolate, how to make it, in what was the second chocolate manufactory in the whole of the country, and that was here on Castlegate back in the 1700s as well. So the chocolate making tradition kind of developed first as a drink, and then we've got confectioners that would make these really amazing sweets and delicacies, and then eventually kind of both of those industrialised, and chocolate met sugar, and then we end up with eating chocolate and all of those amazing confections that York became really, really famous for.
Is there a geographical reason? Like why York? Why did these chocolate companies end up being in York, do you know?
So York, we have to sort of think back several hundred years ago. It was definitely the capital of the north, and we've got this amazing cathedral here in the city, York Minster, and that brought people from all across the world on pilgrimages, and they brought their ingredients with them and they brought their traditions, and so York became this political centre, this religious centre of pilgrimages, this centre of trade and business, and so these ingredients and celebrations that were had here in York because of all of these connections. York was kind of like a little mini Amsterdam. It was run by the merchants, and it being a mercantile city, all of these people, these traders and craftsmen would create things for these amazing riches that would come to the city. But this is pre the Industrial Revolution. So Newcastle, much smaller city, Manchester, Leeds, Sheffield, really towns in comparison to the big industrial centres that we now think of them. So York, kind of, the industry was born in the city.
Sophie Jewett, and we will come back to her shortly, because there is one company and one man who is inextricably tied in with York's chocolate history, and this year happens to be the centenary of his death.
Joseph Rowntree was a businessman, a philanthropist, a social reformer, and was quite radical in his day. He came from a well-established Quaker family in York, and lots of members of his family went on to do kind of incredible stuff. I'm Nick Smith, and I'm the Executive Director of the Rowntree Society.
And I think before we move on, because I think a lot of people have heard the term Quaker, but don't necessarily fully understand who Quakers are. Could you explain a bit about that?
Yes, the Quakers are a Christian church, if you like. A lot of Quakers believe in taking their faith into their everyday life. So for the Rowntrees and Joseph in particular, it was a huge guiding light in how to conduct business, and the kind of ethics that came from his Quaker beliefs were really key in everything he did.
So what chocolate brands did Joseph help establish?
Some of the famous brands that we might know about that came out of Rowntrees are things like Kit Kats and Aeros and Smarties.
Also, I heard that Joseph Rowntree was the inspiration for Roald Dahl's Willy Wonka. If that's true, that's kind of amazing. Is there any truth in that reputation?
He was one of the inspirations, and particularly when he first was brought into his brother's chocolate manufacturing company, one of the things that he did to try and save it was that he would go to places where there was chocolate factories and would start advertising that he was interviewing for jobs. And so what he would try and do is kind of poach people that were working for these chocolate factories, would interview them, and some of these interviews would go into real depth about technical specifics about how the chocolates were made. Sometimes he would then recruit these people, but other times he just took that information back to the factory and tried to replicate it. And so the part of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where there are, spies spying on each other, that, certainly Joseph was involved in some of those activities.
And we are sitting inside a meeting room in a Quaker meeting house, which is, as you said, one of their kind of Quaker churches. Why are we here today?
Well, this was the meeting house that Joseph attended.
And there seems to be quite a strong connection between Quakers and chocolate. Can you explain how that connection came about?
Yeah, so a lot of Quakers, particularly in the 18th and 19th century, were really concerned about people drinking alcohol and some of the issues that can come from that. And so chocolate was seen as a kind of more ethical alternative. And initially, a lot of the chocolate products that started to be manufactured were drinking chocolate. So other well-known Quaker chocolatiers, probably the most famous is the Cadbury's, but we also have the Fries from Bristol. So this connection between the business and the kind of philanthropic or social reform work was never seen as entirely separate. And as the Rowntree's company grew much bigger at the kind of turn of the 20th century, they built a new factory known as the Cocoa Works, which is a little bit out of the city centre in York on Haxby Road. And that was built with the idea of having sports facilities and facilities for doing theatre and kind of after-work activities. But they also employed a doctor and a dentist and later on a psychologist in the factory. And the idea is that there'd be a whole community, that the employees would be looked after. But another kind of outcome of this is Joseph's son, Seabohm Rowntree, pioneered social research, particularly into poverty. The clear message from that was that the reason a lot of people are in poverty wasn't necessarily their own fault, but because they weren't earning enough money. And so that then feeds back into the factory and them looking at how they can make things good for their employees.
Wow, how amazing. So kind of like spearheading, pioneering all this amazing social reform, as well as making really good chocolate. Yeah. Do you think people in York are aware of Joseph Rowntree's legacy today? I
think there's a little bit of a generational divide. Rowntree's was a massive employer in York, and still is. Nestle, which obviously took it over, still are. And so I think a lot of older people knew people who worked for Rowntree's or worked for them themselves. But maybe younger people don't necessarily realise necessarily the how involved they were with some of these social reform ideas, and particularly an inspiration for what became the welfare state comes from kind of the work the Rowntrees were doing. And I will often show photos of the Haxby Road to younger people, and they can't believe what was provided to the employees. Because you can see the sports ground and you can see all these activities going on. Particularly, I guess, people under the age of 40, it just kind of, I get the same response. It's like, why don't employers do this now?
So the chocolate industry was hugely exploitative, and there are still concerns in that area today. Did Joseph Rowntree, was he aware of this exploitation? And do you know if he was kind of doing anything to address it at all?
We do know that towards the end of the 19th century, in the early 1900s, Rowntrees bought former slave plantations in the Caribbean. And there is likely that there were former slaves or the descendants of former slaves and potentially indentured labourers, particularly from the Indian subcontinent, working on those plantations. We have covered some of the evidence of that, and you can have a look at that on the Rowntree Society's website. It seems one of the questions we've got is about what Joseph or other members of the Rowntree family knew about this exploitation and how that fits with their Quaker beliefs and the work that they were trying to do around inequality in this country. We do know that Joseph Rowntree was donating to anti-slavery causes. And so I guess there's some kind of paradox going on here, and how much he was aware of what was going on in supply chain.
The legacy of slavery in the chocolate industry is something brands and organisations like the Rowntree Society are still grappling with today. But the more modern history of chocolate in this part of the world is a story of corporate takeovers, specifically a highly publicised and initially hostile takeover of Rowntree by multinational food company Nestle in the late 80s.
Today, Nestle, the world's second biggest food company after Unilever, launched a £2.1 billion bid for the York-based chocolate maker Rowntree.
Rowntree's fight for independence has provoked powerful emotions, and Rowntree executives have made it clear that Nestle is a most unwanted intruder.
We don't welcome it. We're quite clear that the company can develop its brands on its own, and we've got all the resources we need to do it. So we can go it alone, and we intend to do so.
Meanwhile, Rowntree has a hostile bid here and now, the victim of its own success in becoming one of Europe's leading confectionery manufacturers.
In the last few minutes, it's been announced that the Swiss chocolate firm Nestlé looks to have won its battle for control of Rowntree.
I mean, Nestlé is a huge corporation.
The takeover of Rowntree's from Nestlé in York was, at the time, quite controversial, and still amongst a lot of people is, because it was felt that we were losing something in York with Rowntree's being bought by Nestlé. It all happened when I was very young, and so it's difficult. I'm not originally from York as well, but there is current debate, should we say, about that still today that reverberates through.
Nick Smith of the Rowntree Society on the remarkable legacy of Joseph Rowntree. And before that, BBC archive clips from the 1980s reporting on the Nestlé takeover. The buyout of Rowntree by Nestlé was a front runner in the new era of globalisation for the chocolate industry. Chocolate companies were getting bigger as chocolate itself went from luxury to commodity. And this had knock-on effects for flavour, chocolate brands and the whole global supply chain. Back at York Cocoa Works, Sophie Jewett showed me round her chocolate manufactory, designed with glass sides so the public can see what's going on. Inside, Hessian sacks of cocoa beans lean against great silver mixing vats where liquid chocolate is kept at temperature and flavours mingle. Sophie showed me some beans from the Solomon Islands in the South Pacific, a new variety that she had recently come across.
So I've given a roast of these, so you can break them apart, just don't eat the shell.
Oh, this is the first time I've tried a roasted bean. Would this be different to raw cacao nibs that I might buy?
Yeah, so in this instance, we've roasted the beans and then we're going to break them up through the winnowing process that breaks the beans into nibs and removes the shell. Yeah, exactly. But in some places you could... So this is certainly from a standardisation point of view, what they'll do is remove the shell and break the beans up and then roast the nibs. So what you've had, if you've had raw cocoa nibs or raw cacao nibs, is the fact that they have been broken up before being roasted.
Do you think chocolate has got sweeter since the global companies got involved?
I think what is typical from industrialisation, I've learnt this from being a chocolate maker and visiting different parts of the industry from warehousing. We at the Cocoa Works, we work with non-commoditised cocoa. So that's kind of very much our objective, is to work with single origins of cocoa where we can celebrate the flavour. Now there's more than 33,000 different varieties of cocoa now, and if as a chocolate maker to make something standardised, you need to work with those variations to get a more consistent flavour. One of the easiest things to do is to do that through processing, do that through the roasting process, and that doesn't matter if you make it bitter, if you're going to add more sugar to it. So sugar is just so cheap, and certainly with the price of cocoa going the direction that we've seen it go in, I can certainly understand why sugar becomes such a more significant ingredient in that process.
What is happening with the prices of cocoa at the moment?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. And it's one maybe kind of we could spend a long time talking about. We've actually, in this last time frame, we've seen it come down significantly, but it's come down from having been this time last year at kind of an all-time high. So cocoa on the commodity market, so as I say, we don't buy on the commodity market. Commodity market has historically been about £2.20 a kilo. Christmas last year, we saw it go up to £12 a kilo, which is just such a phenomenal increase, and we're seeing that really play out with the sorts of ingredients people are now choosing to put in their chocolate or substitute, putting in other things that kind of help bulk it out, turning to sugar and all these other characteristics, or replacing what is starting to become more common, the cocoa butter, with other alternative fats. So kind of now we're seeing a lot more classical chocolate companies starting to go to these other fats. It's changing kind of the perception of what chocolate is, because do you know what? I'm a milk chocolate lover. I grew up with cakes and all of those things that we enjoy from a British palate, but it's not really the most adventurous of flavours. But sometimes for us, that's what sells.
Yeah, and actually, as part of this show, we're talking about the kind of trend now that is wacky flavoured or wacky filled flavoured chocolates, because some of the flavours are really out there and they sell.
Absolutely. Well, we used to have a blue cheese chocolate. And this was when we were chocolatiers and we were working with chocolate couverture, and the chocolate we were working with was a bit more standardised because it was coming from a single source. So as chocolate makers, we started to explore all these different flavour characteristics that create cocoa and create the chocolate that we work with. So to actually work with cocoa beans that have got these amazing flavours and characteristics, different acidities, all of those create really complex characteristics that just go amazingly with so many other flavours out there.
I love that there is a photo of Willy Wonka from the film Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and I feel like he's a bit of a patron saint of chocolate in York.
If you look on our main wall here, the line is in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and Willy Wonka uses it in the, or says it in the film, of that we are the music makers. He says it at a point where somebody says, you can't make that, that's not possible. The way he comes out with it, it says, look, we design and we create whatever we want to make, and we have that power. So as chocolate makers, we get to create whatever we want to make, and that's very much kind of the inspiration here.
Sophie Jewett reliving the magic of chocolate in one of York's remaining independent chocolatiers, York Cocoa Works. Back at the Chocolate Festival, I wondered whether any of the punters knew about the city's incredible chocolate history or its link with radical social reform.
Ladies, hello.
We're making a radio episode about chocolate
Okay.
for BBC Radio 4.
To the right people.
Yeah.
I come every year. I get so excited about this particular stall.
And who are these guys?
Rupert Mole. That's it. The unreal.
Oh my gosh, look at this chocolate fountain. And do you know much about the history of chocolate in York?
I obviously like the Terry's and the Rowntree, and obviously we've got the big Nestle factory. So it is like a chocolate city, isn't it?
We get loads of people, particularly from an older generation who used to work at the Rowntree's factory, who come here and start talking to me all about chocolate. Certainly back 50 years ago, Rowntree's used to make all their chocolate in the same way that we do, much grander scale, but yeah.
Hello there. Hi.
Hello.
Have you sampled any chocolate today yet?
I'm not actually terribly keen on chocolate.
Oh, really?
I'm sorry.
That's excellent.
I've lived here 5 years, never made it to the chocolate festival before.
Okay.
I know that the Rowntree were here, and Terry's and some other people, and that it was to do with the Quakers.
That's it.
But as far as my knowledge extends.
I mean, there's a photo of a cacao tree with these beautiful massive pods just hanging off the branches, and it just looks so beautiful and amazing, and how much I would love to see that in real life. Lucky for me and you, we have the next best thing, the food programme's extensive archive, and specifically a programme Dan Saladino made in 2017.
Welcome. I'm deep inside a cacao plantation, walking with two chocolate makers. We're on the east coast of Venezuela.
We're surrounded by a range of different trees of different height, and all you can see are trees and then these bright red cacao pods, and they're above us as well.
You might even say they look ugly, and there is something strange, almost alien, about these large, bulky fruits and the way they grow from the trunks and branches of trees.
Dan Saladino, amid the lush sounds of a rainforest cacao plantation, looking at the large, bulky fruits of the cacao tree. Fruits that are worth their weight in gold. Or at least they have been recently. Environmental NGO Mighty Earth has called the dramatic increase in cocoa prices in the last year a seismic shift. So what exactly is going on?
So my name is Samuel Mauto. I work as a senior advisor at Mighty Earth. I work on the Africa campaign, mostly cocoa deforestation investigations. So a year ago, just around this time, the price of cocoa was just through the roof. It went to, I think, almost $12,000 per ton on the international futures market. And there are many reasons that account for it. One is on the futures market. So here you're understanding that you have speculators trading on the weather, So the fundamental important shift or change is the unpredictability of the weather in the last 3 years, which has really caused a great decline in cocoa outputs from Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. Now, these two are the largest cocoa producers in the world, producing more than 60%. But you take Ghana, for instance, production has more than halved, and that's almost the same for Cote d'Ivoire.
So why has cocoa production fallen so sharply?
Cote d'Ivoire has lost more than 90% of its forest. Ghana, almost the same. So there isn't any new virgin forest to clear to actually produce cocoa to increase output. It's a major problem on many fronts. One is that it means that we have deforested a lot of forest grounds, which is bad for the environment in Ghana, in West Africa generally. And that has also accelerated the problem with climate change because it has changed the local weather patterns. We now currently have the EU deforestation regulation, which seem to be a good bulwark against further deforestation. If only this had come a little bit early, it would have been very, very helpful. So, one, you're talking about unpredictable weather, you're talking about continuous patterns of deforestation, and you're also talking about soils which have been farmed for too long. They are weak and tired, and they don't have the nutrition or the fertility that they used to have. Now, you put all these things together, then it means that the perfect recipe which have been there for sustainable production are no longer there. And there's a new reality that both these countries are facing. These are the important shifts which we have seen. They have been gradual, they were expected, but it's just that maybe people were not really paying attention.
Presumably, someone has made a lot of money out of rising cocoa prices. But who?
Well, I'll tell you for a fact, the farmers in Ghana have not made any significant gain from this high price. And it's speculators, those who are predicting weather or those who are trading based on the weather, who have made all the windfall profits. Very, very little has come back to the farmers. Mind you, at the same time, too, when you look at the companies, they've also been smart about it. They've made their bars a little bit smaller and shorter, with lesser quantity of chocolate and more volume in terms of the other fillers. And then the price has also gone up. So companies, I don't think they have significantly incurred losses. Essentially, it's just the consumer who is paying more for less and thinking they are getting good premium chocolate, and the farmers who have also gotten the short end of the stick.
I also wanted to find out about how big a problem exploitation is in today's cocoa industry.
Cocoa production is just, somebody said it's built on farmer poverty. Farmers need to be poor. Farmers need to sell cocoa at a very low price for this whole $150 billion industry to survive. Because if the raw material costs beyond a certain amount, then it means it's almost impossible to continue the billions in profits that big companies are making. Now, because there is a need for a new frontier for exploitation, forest exploitation, it's likely that the new centers of cocoa production is going to shift further westward towards Liberia because they have a lot of forest, and further eastward towards Cameroon. So these are the new areas where we're going to see a lot of forest exploitation if we don't have serious guardrails to guard against deforestation. But the more human side of the exploitation is when you see children being used as laborers on the field. Then again, traditionally in Ghana, children have been part of the household labor, so they have contributed their labor to the farming experience. The point is that now that we have child labor laws, it means that we are depriving farmers of an important source of labor. Labor is not cheap. Labor is expensive. Add that to the cost of farmers or cost of farming or farming cocoa, then it means that farmers are really, really going to struggle. So what is increasingly happening is that these children are still working on the farms, but maybe during off-school hours. Children still need to work to support the parents because the parent adult farmers don't have the means to hire the laborers to do the kind of work that they need.
One of the few ways that the cocoa industry could be improved is a genuine living wage for farmers, something organisations like Fairtrade and some smaller chocolate companies like Tony's Chocolonely have been campaigning for.
If farmers are getting good enough income that they can live on cover their expenses, cover their education of their kids, and pay for the necessary, contribute to the local development in ways that they can, then it means cocoa is not just a commodity which is being produced for a system. It becomes something that has a developmental angle too. So I can say for Tony's, yes, they're doing that. I'm not sure about the rest. I'm sure some of them may be paying. But it's just that this must be the standard. It shouldn't be the outlier as it currently is.
Should or even can we still enjoy a food that has so many inherent problems in its supply chain?
So the point has always been that consumers are ultimately the people who determine which companies get what money. For a long time, they have been reliant on what companies say. They are ethical, they are doing all the good things, and they can buy products with a clearer conscience. Maybe one example would be maybe those early Quaker companies. I mean, these were companies that took a stance against slavery in cocoa supply chains. And now fast forward about just a few 150, 200 years, they don't take the kinds of positions which were transformational 100 or 150 years ago. Leave it to companies alone and they will not do anything to fix the problem. So consumers need to be aware of this. And being aware of this means that they have a lot of power, although they don't understand. What they choose to buy simply is an endorsement of the kind of cocoa they want to eat. I mean, I will always say, Tony's is small, but they are making big efforts to lead the industry. And companies like that are the ones that we need to keep supporting. There are a whole bunch of other small brands out there which are very ethical. You talk about Beyond Good, the whole range of them. Those are the ones that we increasingly need to support.
Samuel Maltor, Senior Advisor at NGO Mighty Earth. Chocolate is clearly facing a tipping point. Cocoa prices are still high, though down from the heights of last year, and farmers still face exploitatively low wages and the effects of deforestation. There is much that consumers and governments can do, as well as the big chocolate companies. We contacted Nestlé and Cadbury, as two of the biggest chocolate companies previously owned by Quakers, with the ethical values we heard about earlier, to ask about efforts to stop child labour in cocoa today. Nestlé told us that
child labour is a serious, complex issue and we are working hard to address its root causes. We were the first chocolate manufacturer to implement a comprehensive system in 2012 to help address and remediate child labour risks. This system is now widely applied across the industry. Our Income Accelerator programme was created to help close the living income gap of cocoa farming families and reduce child labour risks. We currently have 30,000 families enrolled in the programme across Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana.
Cadbury, which is now owned by multinational snack giant Mondelez International, said,
"We're incredibly proud of the Cadbury brothers' foundational spirit of generosity and kindness and their pioneering commitment to local communities and employees. Through Cocoa Life, our $1 billion cocoa sourcing programme, we are helping to tackle the root causes behind the systemic, social, economic and environmental challenges faced across the cocoa sector. By helping address these challenges through an integrated approach, Cocoa Life aims to bring dynamic change to communities and landscapes where cocoa beans grow."
Meanwhile, back in the north of England, in Newcastle this time, the heritage and passion for chocolate making continues.
This is really unusual white chocolate actually as well. It's got a really high cocoa content, so it tastes almost like milk chocolate. You can have a little try. Just going to pour some callets, which are chocolate buttons, into the white chocolate machine, just to seed the chocolate down, bring it to temperature.
This is Steffi Smith, founder of the Chocolate Smiths. We're in her industrial unit on the outskirts of Newcastle, which seems like an unlikely location for a chocolate maker who is generating some serious online hype.
These are our chocolate machines here, and they hold 75 kilos of chocolate each. So a lot of chocolate.
There are big taps with chocolate pouring out of them that's then getting stirred.
And we take the tempered chocolate from the machine, pour our chocolate bars, and we also hand make all of our fillings as well in our caramel machine. So it doesn't produce enough. It's on all the time.
Chocolate is a treat, but perhaps not one you've ever thought about queuing for, which is what makes the Chocolate Smiths so intriguing. Steffi's twice weekly restocks of her filled chocolate bars have a waiting list of thousands, and she typically sells out in 6 minutes.
It's been just so full on and crazy, and as you can see, this is why we need more shelving, because we have to make a ridiculous amount of fillings now.
And so who are your customers?
We send a lot to America, like a lot, yes, to the point where I think we're actually in the next couple of years going to look at really expanding out there. We get a lot of orders from particularly Texas, which is, I don't know why. So we once shipped, and we had a good laugh about it, an order to the North Pole at Christmas. Yes, we were like, yeah. Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
And the products you make are quite different to other chocolate products on the market. What makes them different?
We do really weird and wonderful flavours, but in chocolate. We're always inventing the wackiest flavour we've ever done, and I'll probably not do it again. It's Christmas dinner. So it had like onion, salt, and garlic, and thyme, and cranberries, and it was really nice, but I love sweet and savoury. We did a cheese and crackers bar as well. And back in the early days, we did a bacon chocolate bar, which was odd. We've done cherry bakewell, we've done tiramisu, we've done cinnamon swirl, we've done creme brulee, we've done pastel de nata. Honestly, you name it, we've probably made it. I think that's why people maybe get so excited, because they don't know what we're going to do next, because we don't know what we're going to do next.
In terms of filled chocolates, there seems to be a bit of a trend.
Yeah.
And there's the Dubai chocolate as well, which is everywhere.
Yes.
What's behind that? I mean, you're probably part of the reason it's a trend, but why do you think filled chocolate is such a thing at the moment?
Because it took off on TikTok. But one thing that I'm quite proud of is obviously we've decided not to do the Dubai chocolate bar. I know many other companies have, but we've always kind of stuck to what we do. But we actually got a message from the chef who developed the Dubai bar to say, you inspired it. So I was like, that's so cool.
So
because
you are the reason for the Dubai chocolate trend.
But I just thought that was so nice, because I was like, you know what, I've resisted doing, because it would sell. It would absolutely sell. It would fly off the shelves if we made it. But I was like, no, we have so many other things that we can be doing. That belongs to that company. I just didn't want to do it.
And for our listeners who don't know what the Dubai chocolate is, can you explain?
Yeah, it's delicious. We've eaten many a bar. It is tahini, pistachio, and kanafi.
How I know kanafi is an actual dessert, which is phyllo pastry, syrup, pistachio, but with cheese. And it's a common dessert in a lot of that region of the world.
Yeah.
Is that what's in the chocolate?
Yes, so it's kanafi. No, wrapped up in milk chocolate. So when you bite into it, it's crunchy, and you get like the nuttiness from the pistachio. The textures are just like next level.
And so are chocolate companies making? Yeah, that they're sort of cashing in on their.
I mean, and I don't blame anybody for doing that, because it's clearly a very, very good seller. But we're actually pretty lucky that we were in the position anyway where things were selling out. Another thing that we do, which is quite different, is something called What Do Ye Want Wednesday, because we're from Newcastle, so it has to be What Do Ye Want Wednesday. And we ask people, what would be your dream chocolate bar? They give us a flavour, we then make it every Wednesday of the month, and then at the end of the month, those flavours go to vote. And our customers can choose which one they want us to actually make to go on sale. So I've made a Black Forest Gatto bar.
Was that this week's public choice?
Yes. Yeah, it's been mentioned quite a lot, a Black Forest Gatto bar.
Okay, and we need to, I guess,
try it. Okay. Let's see, I can do that. There we go.
Oh, that is nice.
Like it?
Yeah.
Good. So it's got a double chocolate caramel in there, a white chocolate filling, and then a cherry kirsch gel.
That's a great filling.
Yeah. Just wanted to make it really indulgent. But yeah, I think people do see this as more of like, if they're going to treat themselves, then they want to spend, their pennies on something where they feel like they're getting a treat.
And how much do they sell for?
So we've actually just put our prices up. They sell for $9.75 a bar. Mm-hmm. to around £10.75 a bar, depending on the chocolate bar and what's in it.
We heard earlier today that the price of cocoa has just gone berserk.
It has, yeah.
How does that affect you as a business?
So it massively affects us because obviously if you're not sleeping and breathing chocolate all day, you're probably not going to think too much into it. But when it's literally like your livelihood, it's on your mind all the time. So we've had to increase our prices because of the rising cocoa prices.
And I can see some Newcastle landmarks actually as part of the mould.
We're really proud of where we're from. So we've got the Tyne Bridge on there, the Metro, you've got Monument there as well, and Newcastle Castle.
So you guys are based in Newcastle upon Tyne. We're in the northeast, which has a strong history with chocolate.
Yeah.
How important is that element, like your geographical location, to you?
I think because sometimes we're a northern company, you know, so I often think if we were based in London, would people maybe think our chocolate is going to be more premium? Do you know what I mean? So I do wonder that sometimes. It is up there, you know, it is a premium chocolate bar, even though we're in like the north. So I'm really proud of that as well. I think that's maybe why I want to put Newcastle on the map for that.
Even looking at the packaging, it's got a real Willy Wonka.
Yes.
You know, kind of we can do any flavour type vibe to it. Have people called you the Willy Wonka of today?
They have, yes.
What do you think about that?
I think that's amazing because, but I'm just so proud of everything that we're doing, and you know, it gives people that lovely experience and takes them back to when they were little, and you know, Willy Wonka's magical, and that's the kind of thing that we also want to be associated with. So it's a lovely association, yeah.
From Newcastle to the North Pole, the Chocolate Smiths is certainly keeping the chocolate heritage of the north of England alive. But despite the buzzy trends and the innovation, out in the plantations and on the trading floors, chocolate is changing. And while it remains a food that brings people pleasure and indulgence, as we are starting to see already, the future is likely to look very different. The food programme was presented by me, Leyla Kazim, and produced by Nina Pullman for BBC Audio in Bristol.